Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Duncan Smillie. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind, Duncan Smillie.
Thank you very
You're
much.
back in God's country.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you
Last
for
time
having
I
me.
saw you, we were in what pub was it? In Madrid.
We're in Madrid with Charlie Mulgrew and David Lowe. Quite an experience that was.
It was a good weekend actually, and it just shows you again you can go anywhere and find comrades in green and white hoops, of course. But I want to talk to you about this season, this chaotic, dysfunctional season, and also what the work that you and David and others have been doing in terms of the shares, Celtic Supporters Limited. But let's talk about this season first and foremost. Did you think we would have this amount of regimes in terms of management regimes in one campaign? We were meant to be a well-run football club.
Yeah, I know, and no, I did not expect that to be on our fourth version of a management team, and we're not even out of January. I didn't see it coming. I've never, for a long time now, a few years, I've not been buying into the narrative and the illusion that we're a well-run business and football club, because we haven't been and we're not. I keep waiting for us to hit rock bottom from a leadership perspective, but it feels like we've hit rock bottom and we've started digging. So we're not in a good place. We're banging a title race. I don't like short-term thinking. However, given where we are, we're recording this 2 weeks now into the January transfer window, and the fact that we don't have a striker in the building terrifies me. I think the good news is I've lost the Stockholm syndrome that I used to have about this board, thinking they would always get us out of it. I've got no faith whatsoever that we're going to put 3 or 4 good bodies into that team during the January window. So yeah, we're in a dogfight, and miraculously I still think we can win this league. But to some extent we've got to buy our way out of it. I don't have any faith that we're going to do that as a club. I don't think we've got the individuals at the club that can get that done and get these deals over the line.
That's a massive concern. I mean, sometimes success will mask a lot of these deficiencies behind the scenes. Duncan, you've been involved in business, and I'm pretty sure that is the case, not just with Celtic. But how long do you think this rot has been there? Do you think it's something that's always existed, but because we keep winning, that fans don't always see it? Because it's pretty glaringly obvious now there's a lot of things happening, and I mean, some of it's kind of amateurish, particularly with the recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going to back and plot where did this all go wrong. For me, you can go as far back as Seville, post-Seville. We didn't double down. Now, I know that we had huge cost issues then, but we chose to really downsize the club. And then even through possibly, and it was one of the best days of my life when Rangers went bust, but it was maybe a bad thing for the club, because the people in charge of the club at the time, and most of them are still there because they've been there forever and a day, they chose, rather than like digging in and kicking away from Rangers and becoming a European force, with a freebie, we downsized, we brought in Ronnie Dyla. That wasn't good, and then it all became about 10 in a row. And the COVID season was, for many reasons, a particular low point for me. Let's be totally honest about it. We got really lucky with Ange. I think that was we got really lucky. And I actually go as far as to say, had we got Eddie Howe over the line, that he wouldn't have had the success that Ange had. I don't think Eddie Howe's cut out for managing Celtic. But yeah, we seem to go backwards at a rate of knots. There is no recruitment. Let's not talk about our recruitment structure, our process at Celtic. We don't have one, and we've not had one for a long time. Our recruitment process is to take advice of agents, ex-players, commentators, look and see who other teams at our level are about to sign them, try and go in and gazump them. That's not a strategy. It's just not, and I don't see anything changing. Tisdale's been thrown under the bus. He's massively oversold himself. How you can get away with that, you've got to doff one of his many caps to him, but he's absolutely hoodwinked an old age pensioner and Dermot Desmond at a wedding. And if it was about talking a good game, then you'd have a great job in Scottish football. You'd be the CEO of UEFA if talking a good game was all you needed. You need some substance to back it up, but we've got nobody in the building, Paul John, and it's terrifying. My hairline has gone back 2 inches in this window alone. It's about to go back and disappear, but every time I come in, I'm looking at Sky Sports, I'm checking my phone. I don't know why I'm doing it, because I've got zero faith. We'll probably bring in a couple of duds at the last couple of days of the window, and we'll motor on through. It's staggering, and thanks for this therapy session, because that's how it feels.
This is, yes, you're on the couch. This is like an episode of Sopranos. And I think even just this season will give us enough examples, Duncan, of a lot of things that have existed for a long time. Like you say, you could dig right back to Seville. I always laugh when David Lowe talks about Seville, and the grand old Duke of Cork, takes you to the top of the hill and back down again. But I also think 2012 is pivotal in this story because there's an opportunity. But what did we do? We just waited for them to come back. We waited for them to return, and then the rivalry's there, and we think, all right, we'll just pass the parcel again. And I actually think that the downsizing, a lot of people think there's maybe a conspiracy in, oh, you're doing it on purpose to keep Rangers close to you. There was always going to come a point where someone got their house in order. And I'm looking at Hearts, and we talk about data as if it's newfangled. It's not. We have had opportunities over the last decade to get involved in top tier data systems, and we've refused because, like you say, we've been so lazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy into the conspiracy theory. I do buy into the incompetence theory, and I don't even think it's a theory. I think it's fact that we're being incompetent, and we've had no leaders at the club. The last leader we had at the club off the pitch was Peter Lawwell. Whether you like Peter or not, he was a force of nature, and he did have a presence, and he was a quoted guy in European football, and he pretty much did run Scottish football, and I'm okay with that. But no, I don't believe in the conspiracy. It's incompetence, but it is mind-blowing. And when we talk about data, and we use Moneyball, we'll reference Moneyball. Moneyball was like 20 years ago, more. And that's the basis. It's sabermetrics and all that stuff. It's one club in your bag. I'm a golfer. I'm a dreadful golfer, and there's a couple of clubs in my bag that I use once every 2 or 3 rounds. Data is just one of them. That's it. It's not the be all and end all. You don't just have a spreadsheet that you press a button and it comes out with a good right back out of 120 or however many you're looking at. And yeah, Tony Bloom seems to have developed his own system and his Jones Analytics. Very good. Good for him. But we're talking about Hearts here. And we should not be in a conversation where we're comparing Celtic to Hearts. Hearts are a well-run club, a good fan majority owned club, but it's Hearts. Yeah, they're the third biggest team in Scottish football, I would suggest. But we're talking about Hearts here. We're talking about Tony Bloom. He's got a minority stake in the club. It's terrifying how that can happen in one season, and suddenly we are chasing them. As we're recording this, we're 6 points behind them. Rangers were always going to get it together. They've had false start after false start for the last almost 14 years. These guys are real guys. I think they had a bad or a good, depends which way you look at it. They had a great first experience of Rangers because they made a royal mess of it. They've learned from that, and you can see, and I don't know anything about Danny Rowe. He seems to be doing a decent enough job. They will get this right, and it just shows you that in one season, the clocks can be reset, and here we are, head to head with Hearts and with Rangers, and that's unforgivable for me for our club. Unforgivable.
You know, we get a bit of stick sometimes in Acsom for always going back to the Bayern Munich game. But I see it as the most recent example, Duncan, of us having a glimpse of where Celtic could, and a lot of fans think should be. And I was looking at that thinking, well, see if a season of your ambition was to get the 2 extra games, be that the playoff in the Champions League, and buy players accordingly and make sure that you're prepared for that, then even if you don't get the extra 2 games, you'll do okay in that campaign, or you'll be strong enough to drop into the Europa League. And I just always think that should be the ambition. So if we go back to Bayern Munich, because I think that
less than 10 months ago, less than 10 months.
That's incredible. See, when you look at that. And I remember being at the game at Celtic Park, and Big Ida got in the way of a potential goal for Kuhn. First few minutes of the game, if I remember right. We were very close, so close. And then you think to yourself, the interview that Brendan gave after the game in the Allianz Arena, it was almost as if he was like, I know what we're going to do. The board are going to back me, and we can push on. But they weren't behind him.
No, they weren't behind him. And again, I'm putting that down to incompetence rather than lack of ambition. They actually don't know what they're doing. And like less than 10 months ago, when you look at that performance, and heartbreaking that we didn't take Bayern Munich to extra time that night. Who knows what would have happened in extra time. But to go from there to where we are so quickly, and when you look at where we are now, and you look at the squad of players, I'm going to say this is the worst squad of players that's been in our club this century, without question. And when you look at the sellable assets, I know people don't like that language, but we have been quite, I'm going to say, lucky or fortunate to have fallen upon a bunch of good players and some crazy decision makers in Saudi Arabia. We've found ourselves with this cash, and maybe that's part of the problem because we never planned for having this cash. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a squad. You fast forward to the end of this season, it's an aging squad. The amount of guys that are 27, 28, 29, 2 years in their deal, out of contract. We don't have. Who's the player in that team that we're selling for 25, 35 million? That player is yet to reveal themselves if that player is in that squad. But in 10 months, which is such a short time, to go from that Allianz Arena to where we are today, it's it makes me angry. I'm not an angry guy. It really does make me angry. And pushing it back on the club and the business side of the club, I think that's corporate negligence. To be sat on the amount of cash that we have is not good business. I think we're going to pay £20 million in tax in 2 years. Unforgivable. It's not as if there's nothing to do. Let's imagine that we bought players. Let's imagine we didn't buy players. Our stadium is in disrepair.
Yep.
It is. Bits of that stadium are going through the main stand. That main stand doesn't have hot water. There are bits of that stadium that are falling to bits. We should be investing in the fabric of that stadium, as well as bringing in 2 or 3 good players every year. You've got to bring in a player that puts the current players on the bench, not firefighting and replacing Tierney with Tierney, Jota with Jota, trying to replace Kyogo with Kyogo, Martin O'Neill in a revolving door. It's just, it's unforgivable. And I'm going to suggest it is. It's corporate negligence.
Yeah. See, when you're talking about the stadium, I was down at Spurs a couple of years ago. Now, I know that's a different world, right?
Yeah.
But I did read something from Levy where he said that anybody whose football stadium is getting used 25 days a year is failing. And you look at Celtic and think there's so much more we could do. Even with regards to my very first concert I went to was at Celtic Park.
U2?
U2.
I was at that concert,
Right?
yeah.
Everybody I speak to,
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
And it was stereo MCs and Utah Saints. So I think I was on the second night that U2 played. We can't even do that now. So we can't even use it for concerts. And you think, if you were to redo the main stand, make sure that we've got the ability to get the cranes in to build a stage.
I've been at Liam Gallagher, Jerry Cinnamon. I'm going to Metallica next year at Hampden. Everybody knows what it's like getting to and from Hampden. And it's a terrible stadium. It's even worse than Celtic Park. But that's where the big concerts go. Why are we not having that? We play at Falkirk tomorrow night. Falkirk, you can see the Killers down at Falkirk. Elton John. It's like, again, it's just utter madness that we find ourselves in this position. And a mixture of arrogance, incompetence, being over-promoted, and I genuinely think that this board are in a sort of group thinking. I don't think they even know it's as bad as it is, and that they're not leaders, they're not strong people, but they're not stupid. They're not stupid individuals. But to not have a spatial awareness as a CEO that Michael Nicholson does not possess, he genuinely thinks he's doing a good job. I've heard you reference what was said in that meeting and I've heard these talk about, let us fix the mistakes. They're just making mistake after mistake, and it's like enough. And it's beyond repairing. I just cannot imagine any circumstances that exist on this planet that executive team stay in place and our largest shareholder stays there, because it's Groundhog Day when Dermot's got his hands on control of the club from a minority stake.
Yep. And we'll talk about ways in which that can be affected. But you mentioned mistakes here. Let's talk about the first mistake, potentially. We lose the Scottish Cup to Aberdeen and we go into that pre-season, Duncan, fresh in the knowledge that, by the way, if we invest a wee bit, as we did with Trustee, Ida and Engels, we can push on. All you need to do is get into that middle tier of the Champions League group and you'll be fine. You'll get another couple of games at least. We failed to do that, but we also failed to staple down the future of Brendan Rodgers. And I think at that point, if the club had no plans to keep him on, Duncan, if he was such a divisive figure, which comes later, make the change then.
100%.
So the first mistake is that pre-season, I think, in this campaign.
Yeah, you're right. If based on the statement that the aforementioned Doherty Pensioner that got diddled out of employing Paul Tisdale, the fact that he is there controlling everything and making every decision in the club, that's just patently wrong. In terms of the business perspective, the corporate negligence again. So we've got all that cash, we're paying 20 million in tax. By not helping the manager, that you're in future you will take a flamethrower to when you get the login for the company website, and was an absolute coward. I'm not going to say the other word that starts with one word and ends in bag. He was a coward by not putting his name in that statement, because that means that if Brendan wanted to sue, got to sue the club, not sue Dermot. But for not to back the club not to back the manager in the summer last year or fire him, again, That's probably a £40 million decision. Our take from the Champions League last year was about €40 million. Spurs, who won it, got about €11 million for the Europa. So we done ourselves out of 40 million by not being the mighty Kairat, which again, I can feel the hair going back again another half an inch there. That's another £40 million decision.
Yep.
So you put that on top of a £20 million tax, but it's just like, where does it stop? And like, as you say, Paul John, if he was that divisive a character and you knew he was going to his last year, his contract, terminado, get rid of him and bring somebody else in. But no, you just let you muddle through, get the rosary beads out, hope that you can stumble through versus Kairat. It's just mind-blowing. And then, like, to put the cherry on the top, to finish the transfer window, having not got a striker, having to recall Yang, get him back up the road and telling Dyson Maeda, tell your wife she's got to unpack the boxes again, you're staying in Glasgow for another 6 or 12 months. We don't get a striker. Somebody phones a guy in Spain and says, terminate his contract and we'll get this guy that's injury prone, that Kel Saprise is injured again. It's like, honestly, when I speak to my friends about this that aren't Scottish or mostly like English guys that support English teams, it's the, you always win, Dunk. It'll be okay what you're worried about. And they don't get it because they don't live and breathe it. I live and breathe it, probably not as much as you. But this determines my mood. I'll be 55 years old next month. You have no idea how much it annoys me that I wake up and whether Celtic win or how things determines my mood. Totally. I hate it. I absolutely hate it, but I cannot change it. My missus is a therapist. She's an actual CBT therapist. She changes people's behaviour. I'm beyond changing. I've asked her, she's hypnotised me, and I'm not joking. She has hypnotised me before. She kind of changed my behaviours, but it's how we are, it's how we're wired up, and I like that because we care so much. And that's why I like that we can be militant and we can be rebels and we can be out there protesting. I like that. We're not just going to sit back and take it. There's a club not far from here that let themselves die, and what did they do when they were in? They just went to the golf club and hoped that somebody would sort it out. That's not the Celtic way. Celtic way is to get yourself informed, get yourself together, get yourself speaking, get yourself protesting, get yourself coming for 2 or 3 different angles. That's the right way to do it, because it's our club, it's not their club. The guys are there. They're custodians of their club. They're a blink in an eye. It's a tail wagging the dog. They think it's their club and they're helping us. It's our club. It's our club. And the sooner we'll get rid of a board before, and we can get rid of another one.
Yeah, and you know this, Duncan, when you're talking like that, I like to think of a scenario where you're in the boardroom or you're part of the club. You've had experience of that at Partick Thistle. So, slightly different scenario, but as someone who was a shareholder at that football club, was to be making this type of decision, sacking managers, appointing managers, making the phone calls, and as you say, tapping into the club communications network and actually putting out an obliteration of a statement, right? Yeah. If you're the chairman or the CEO, what are you doing? So take us into that scenario.
I tell you what I'm doing, I'm resigning.
A competent... Yeah.
I'm resigning. I'm resigning.
It's embarrassed you, isn't it?
If you're CEO, the closing the title, you're supposed to be the chief executive in that club. And there's a reason why our current CEO, who's never been a CEO, he was a lawyer. I have no opinion on whether he's a good lawyer or a bad lawyer. He was a lawyer. He went in there on an interim basis after Don Mackay left, and he's found himself in a job. He's probably yanking out at least £1 million a year out of that club. I've been a CEO. Not quite as big as Celtic, but ever so slightly smaller than Celtic. You don't get paid $1 million a year. You get 200, 300, 400 grand max. There's a reason why he's getting paid as much as he does. And it's the same with the CFO. The reason is he does what he's told. And he does what he's told because it basically goes from Dermot to the chairman to the CEO. And as long as you do what Dermot, so he can do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, and behave. And it's unbecoming of Celtic for him to behave like that. That statement that Dermot made was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. No winners in that statement. For a CEO to be mute over that, and a chairman at the time to mute, it's embarrassing. So what am I doing as a CEO? I'm asking to apologise, or there's my resignation letter. But I'm not doing it because I'm getting £1 million a year. I dine out in the fact that I'm the Celtic CEO. That I'm the man. That doesn't work for me, Paul.
Not at all. And again, that ties in with what you're doing with your Celtic Supporters Limited, Duncan, because it's a situation that needs to come to an end with regards to the control over what he does have compared to what he controls. Just before, so we're going back to October it was, we had this meeting with the CEO. So just before all this kicked off. And what we're getting told there is that, they're all unified, and Brendan's obviously getting told to go out and say that in his press conferences. I think he was more or less told, stop rocking the boat, get out there and tell us that, we all bleed green and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
Right? And we're getting told that as fans, and you're sitting there thinking, right, I'm taking what you're saying, but I'm seeing your lips moving, but I'm not believing this, right? And very, very shortly afterwards, it's all proven to have been an absolute nonsense, a smokescreen. There is no unity. Brendan Rodgers wasn't signing off the players. They had been hoodwinked by Paul Tisdale. The questions at that point, you're talking about being informed. I'm sitting in a room with people who are far more informed than I am on Celtic, because they're asking questions about the appointment of Paul Tisdale at that point. I wasn't sure of any of the details at that stage, but they were, and they're asking the pointed questions, and they're denying it. Oh, there was a process, and so many people, there were candidates. Nonsense. We know that that was absolute nonsense. So we've led ourselves into this situation. And I remember on that fateful Monday of the statement, my wee boy who's just turned 9, when I get the message coming through, thinking to myself, I'm going to have to go online now and do a live stream, an emergency live stream. And I'm just like, where are we settings? He says, are you just a way to process your emotions? And I said, yeah, I think that's what I'm about to do. 8-year-old at the time. And then Mark O'Neill. And it was such a shot out of the blue for me, because we'd done a few gigs with Martin. I had the absolute pleasure of spending a wee bit of time backstage with him. But I never ever thought in a million years he would ever be the manager of Celtic Football Club. In fact, he told me he was pretty happy doing what he was doing. He had written his book, he had a position at the FA, and he was speaking to Celtic fans all over the globe. I mean, he was in demand, a Rackham tour, really great insight, great humour. And then it comes up, he's been appointed, and I'm thinking, what on earth? But again, let's go back to Desmond. One man calling the shots, Duncan. Appointing managers, sacking managers. I mean, we can say he was resigned, sacked, right? And again, this is somebody who's a shareholder at a football club. Legally, can he do that?
Well, yeah, because he's done it. He's done it several times. And the reality is, there's not many good things that I can point at the leadership of Celtic over the past, let's call it a century. We've actually been okay at appointing managers. There's not been many bad appointments. And maybe that's more by luck than judgment, I don't know. And I imagine somewhere, probably in a super yacht in St. Bart's in the Caribbean, Dermot's sitting there saying, see, they got this guy Nancy, wouldn't it be my guy? My guy would have been insert Irish guy here, Keane, McKenna, whoever. But I'll get the next one, guys, don't worry, I've got this. And with no self-awareness that the guy that appointed him, Tisdale, was, as far as I'm led to believe, the guy you met at a Strachan wedding. So you caused this problem. And it's the same, if you look at the press releases from the CEO and from the chairman after Tisdale and Nancy went, it was like, right guys, we've made the decision, we've done you a solid here. No admission that we put these two guys in their jobs. In what world was Tisdale and Nancy a good fit for this club? And this is not hindsight, it is with Nancy, because I didn't pay attention to the Tisdale appointment. But in the Nancy appointment, right from the get-go, when it became clear he was going to be the guy, I went on to YouTube and I looked at what people were saying about him. I watched some of his interviews and I thought, this guy doesn't sound or look or feel in any way, shape or form like a Celtic manager. And when he's appointed, I was really, really nervous about his appointment. And I was at the game, the Hearts game, where he had his first game in charge. And after the game, our chat after it was, I don't think this guy's got it. And then, not the tactics board, that doesn't bother me, but his language after it, subsequent language, results, clearly the players wouldn't they have lost the dressing room, because you've got to have a dressing room to lose it. He never had the dressing room, that was clear. And the fact that our captain's not in front of the camera until he goes says so much for me. But who put him in the job? The current executive. Who appointed him? Tisdale. Who appointed him? The current executive. I'm looking for full falling on your sword, Japanese style. You've dishonoured the family and you've got to go. But no. And these guys are going to pick the next manager.
I know.
And that, I wouldn't send them out for a loaf of bread. Far less to buy a striker or decide the future of our club and how we're going to play, what our recruitment structure and strategy is. Zero faith in the leadership.
Well, see, if we focus on this season and this season alone, that gives anybody watching this enough reason to say we need change in the way that Celtic operate. And that's where I think people like yourself come in, because you do have a vision of how this can change. So if we're talking about The summer being the first mistake of underperforming in the transfer window,
Yeah.
but also not really making a decision on the future of the manager, either give him a longer contract or replace him. Then, obviously, everything that followed with Kyrax, etc. The next big mistake, when you sack him, coming out and embarrassing the club and everybody associated with the club with that terrible statement, you then bring in Martin O'Neill for 37 days, totally unexpected, and he works wonders. He works almost like a shield.
Yep.
And I've said this so many times on the show, Duncan. See, the vast majority of Celtic fans, if Celtic are winning, they don't look behind the curtain. Whatever's happening behind the scenes, it's fine because we keep winning. And I don't think I'm trying to discredit any Celtic fans. That's just the way it is.
Of course it is.
You're always going to have an element who are always looking bit under the bonnet, what's wrong with the academy, what's wrong with recruitment, the stadium, the boardroom. But most fans don't. They just want to watch the game.
Yeah.
It's about the only release they get of the week.
It should be fun.
And that came back under Martin. And I'm looking at it thinking, right, okay, we've kind of stumbled into this situation. It doesn't seem right. Sean Maloney, if you'd mentioned him before, they would have said no chance. Martin O'Neill's 73 years of age, out the game for 6 years. This shouldn't work, but it's working. Why not just keep it till the end of the season? Do you think that was an option?
Look, I'm going to be brutally honest. When it was made, I was like you. I was surprised at the decision. Very quickly, it was clear it was working. Because let's face it, it wasn't working under Brendan. It was only heading in one direction. If I'm brutally honest, I said that we should keep Martin until after the cup final. But I didn't want to keep him until the end of the season. I'm being totally honest. But I thought, do not throw a manager in to play the league leaders a European game in a cup final. Because I tell you now, Celtic wouldn't have lost to Hearts and they'd have won that cup final.
Yeah.
They would have. I think anybody would have lost that European game. Nobody's winning that game for us. It is hindsight for me, and hindsight's never around when you need it. I didn't want to keep him until the end of the season. I don't know why. And again, back to my Stockholm syndrome with it, which is now expired. I thought, we'll get the right guy. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks to appoint somebody. We'll get a good guy that can kick us on and get this league title over the line and start building for the future. I didn't foresee Nancy, which was, I would liken to the Liz Trust reinership. And it just absolutely... I'm going to try and erase it from my memory in the history books, and hopefully when we look back in this, it'll just be a quiz question. But again, in bringing Martin, you said earlier, you never envisaged when you're spending time with Martin backstage at events that he'd ever be the Celtic manager again. He came back, and I was really pleased that for a generation younger than us, they'd only heard of Martin O'Neill in the same way as we'd heard about Jock Stein and what have you. We don't have first-hand experience. I was terrified that his legacy was going to be, and all he did was he cemented it. And if there was never any question for me, if there's a Mount Rushmore of Celtic, then Martin O'Neill was always in it. He's front and centre now, and alongside Jock Stein, he's without question our second best manager. And I was there the night he walked, I thought, that's him gone, off into the sunset, and he's back again. Like Bobby Ewan, Dallas moment, never happened. No, there wasn't Nancy. No, of course it wasn't Nancy. Martin O'Neill's always been here. Look, he's in the same trackie. He's winning games. No, that never happened. And look, he's back. He's here till the end of the season. I'm going to say now, Martin O'Neill wins that league. He's here next season. I genuinely think that I know, and I know this for a fact, that he would have stayed till the end of the season. I know that to be factually true. 100% trust the person that told me that, and they heard it directly from Martin O'Neill. He wasn't asked if he wanted to stay until the end of the season. He would have done. I thought when he came back this time, the trilogy, that he might have pushed for a longer contract.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have surprised me if they said he's here for 18 months. Now, I think Celtic, Stockholm Syndrome's calling me, I think Celtic have had a plan, and that they've got their eye on a manager that becomes free after the World Cup. And I think going back to last summer, that we've just alluded to, I think the plan was, Brendan's not signing, he doesn't want to be here, we don't want to be here, but we've got enough in the tank to get us into Champions League. He can disappear into the sunset in the summer, and after the World Cup, we're going to bring in a new manager. I think that's been their plan. I still think it's their plan, but again, I don't know why I'm putting trust in them.
You mentioned something, I haven't even thought about this, but in terms of the point of reference, and you said about, harking back to tales of Jock Stein, and like yourself, I wasn't old enough to remember the great Jock Stein, so it's on fuzzy footage. So there's a generation of fans who will be watching Martin O'Neill's time and it's predating their lives or their support at Celtic. So Martin coming 20 years after 2005 would be like Jock Stein returning 20 years after 1978.
For the centenary season.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? So you're thinking to yourself, Martin O'Neill comes back.
That's mind-blowing when you say that.
And it is, because it's almost out of step, a little bit out of step.
Yeah.
But with regards to Nancy, and I need to mention, I'm sorry, because we're going to have PTSD, and I think you're right, when you're talking about a footnote in Celtic's history, he is merely a quiz question, mate.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that they said, oh, we've done it with Ange, so we can do it with Nancy. Completely different managers with completely different CVs. Ange was a winner, and he was a winner over a period of 20 odd years, and he did it in Australia, and he did it at an international level, and he did it in Japan, as we know. So less of a punt than the likes of Nancy, who had been involved in football for 4 years, football management for 4 years. And I think that at that point we ran a show. Whatever we say about Celtics out there, we can't deny it. We said this, we said that, we were right, we were wrong. And the 4 managers we named were Nancy, because he was in the press, Knutson, Nicky Hyen, and Kieran McKenna. And at the time, if you were to watch that back, I'm pushing for McKenna.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm doing it, Duncan, is because, again, my football knowledge of English football is not what it used to be, because I concentrate on Celtic and Celtic alone. Fell out of love with the English game a few years ago. But I was looking at the past appointments of them at Desmond, and I'm thinking, right, he's the most Desmond-like appointment that we could get. I'm then looking at the fact that he obviously took Ipswich up into the Premiership. I then find out, it might have been you that told me, that when he got them up, he was using Jamestown analytics to get them there. Jamestown was then pulled because they don't allow an opposing team in the same league as one of the teams that Bloom's got. And I'm not saying that was the reason he dropped back down, but he goes back down, and then somebody's telling me he's got a clause in his contract, a promotions clause of 10 million quid. Therefore, there's no way he's leaving, because there's a chance he might get promoted. So I thought he was the guy, and that was the one I was looking at, because Knutson and Nicky Hyen, for me, they're part of a bigger operation,
for sure,
where you're maybe having to employ their football director or their head of academy as well as the manager. So I thought, we're not doing that. But Nancy really wasn't on my radar. I'd heard the name because of the press coverage, but he was 4th in that list of 4 for me. So that's no hindsight. It was nothing short of a disaster. It was a complete catastrophe. And as fans, you're trying to buy into it because this is our club. You're watching the players, their body language, their interviews after games, the fact that Callum McGregor went AWOL, never spoke to the pit, and you're thinking, if we stick with this guy, we're finishing 3rd or worse, Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time we've appointed a manager where I didn't have in my mind, this is the guy I want. There wasn't a clear favourite for me. And you mentioned Knutson and Nicky Hyen. I don't pay attention to European football unless Celtic are playing a European game. I really like English football, and I watch a lot of the Premier League. I don't have a lot of, it wasn't me that told you the Jamestown analytics thing about McKenna, but I've got no opinion on McKenna. He seems to have he's on the right trajectory, career-wise. If he's got a 10 million clause and he's sitting okay in that league, he's going nowhere. I don't know if he'll be a good manager, but certainly Knutson and Hyen and anybody else, unless you're bringing the head of recruitment and the guys on the laptops and everything else, the guys will drown. I mean, if Hearts win the league this year, do you go and try and get Derek McInnes? Like, not like, of course you don't. It's not. And I think it's another conversation for another day. I actually think managers are less and less important now in football. I don't think they're that important. I think you need a guy at the front, like a Martin O'Neill, or like an Andrew, even like a Neil Lennon, somebody that is at the front, that is the motivator, is a part of them. As long as you've got the back office right and your recruitment right, within reason it doesn't matter who your manager is. If they're good in front of the press and you can motivate players and put arms around people, it's what's happening behind you that's dictating who is playing where and what formation you're playing and what have you. And at the time, and I had this conversation, I think, with you, when Sean Maloney was appointed as the head of Pathway, or whatever his title was, an alarm bell went off in my mind saying, right, he's in there as an insurance in case Brendan walks or we fall out of Brendan. That's never going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. He's in there as a cheap option because Celtic and Dermot put somebody in the job that can do what they're told, and he fits that bill. He's in there as backup. And then maybe after the World Cup, somebody like, oh, I don't know, Roberto Martinez. And he's my guy. If I'm having a bet now, I'm betting that Martinez is the next Celtic manager.
I'm with you.
And he's worked with Sean Maloney. His missus is from, I think, Motherwell. Every Spanish guy's dream. He grows up in Spain. He wants to marry a wee bird from Motherwell. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? He's a lucky man.
Did Gattuso do that as well?
Yeah, well, let's move on for him. but it makes sense for me. So that won't happen. Because like you bring Martinez in, he's at the right age of career. He's got Maloney that is appearing to be a good coach, and suddenly Maloney looks like a good option for manager after Nancy. And there's a saying, to a drowning man, everything looks like a life preserve. That's where I was when Nancy was at the wheel, is that you think, well, suddenly you've got Sean Maloney taking over with Fotheringham and McManus and Gavin Strachan. Is that, I can get behind that? Not in the summer. I think that's where this is going. But again, I don't know. And I would love, if I could get in front of Michael Nicholson, probably best behind some glass or plastic, actually. But the two questions I'd like to ask him is, first of all, can you look me in the eye and tell me you think you're doing a good job? And secondly, at what point did you think Nancy was the right appointment for this job? I think he still thinks he's doing a good job because he's getting paid 10 grand every month, so he's doing a great job. And I think that he thinks that, well, that's on Tisdale. That's nothing to do with us. There was no recruitment process for Tisdale. And to say, or for Nancy or Tisdale, I'm betting that Nancy was always going to be the guy and that they didn't speak to anybody else and anything else other than a chat with somebody's agent or a WhatsApp message. It was always going to be Nancy, but he was never, ever going to be a success. And that's not hindsight. It was obvious before he arrived. It was obvious after his first game. You can see the players aren't buying into it. And even when you look at Callum's interview after the game at the weekend, he doesn't mention any names, but he says so much about what he was feeling. And I believe there was an altercation in the dressing room against Motherwell. I think it was Kieran Tierney that lost his mind at the entire room, but particularly at the manager. And the manager, he's sit this one out, son. And that's when I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, as I have with every bad Celtic manager. I've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt until I don't. I thought after Motherwell, he would have gone. I thought, surely it looked like we were playing Madrid, no Motherwell. And it was embarrassing. I've never seen us played off the pitch by a team, other than Rangers back in the day, as they were. I've never seen us played off the pitch by a team like we were against Motherwell that night. It's worrying. The same guys, it's amateur psychology. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same things, expect different results. That's where we are. It's a Groundhog Day. These are the guys that are in charge of making the next appointment. I'm more concerned about the next 2 or 3 weeks because I think that this league is won this month. And I think that I see Rangers and Hearts bringing players in. I've got no opinion whether the quality of those players are good or bad, but I can see Hearts are already bringing in a right back because they're going to lose their one in the summer. They're already bringing a replacement in. That's a proper recruitment process. I'm not buying this January a difficult window. It's not a difficult window. And if you start it on January the 1st, you're making it harder for yourself. You should have been started months and months and months ago. There should have been somebody through that door, not to have a striker. It's just no trial, no jury, straight to prison.
Another massive mistake. Started on January the 1st is bad enough, but the way that this has happened with a domino effect, we're starting it when Martin and Sean walked back in the door, Duncan, because what's been realised is that the Tisdale thing was a shambles. The players that he had lined up were nowhere near the quality that we require. And I mean, we've got a bit of evidence to suggest that that's the case with Mura and Shin Yamada and guys like that. Nowhere near the quality that we need, like you say, to actually get through this window and push on. And we finally get rid of Nancy. Did you think it was going to happen this soon? Because the Motherwell game that you cite, the first game where nobody can say, oh, but we made all these chances, or had that one gone in, or Johnny Kenny scores that. Nobody could make up an excuse. Motherwell played us off the park. We were rotten. We created nothing. There was no life to it. And then the rumours start about the Tierney thing at half time and taking him off and all that. I still at that moment did not think the board were going to make a decision. On the Friday night before the Rangers game, I'm meant to be with Martin.
I know, yeah.
400 tickets sold, 1,600 on the waiting list, gold dust tickets. I even broke the boycott, can I say that quietly? And I got a Martin O'Neill tracksuit top because it was going to be on a mannequin on the stage. And less than 24 hours or around 24 hours before that happened, I get word it's off. Now, I would have moved heaven and earth to make sure it happened because there's lots of logistics to then take care of. There's the financial element, which is never good. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, does this mean that something's going to happen? I then say to our PR contact at Celtic, just to let you know, your phone's about to melt because I'm just about to cancel a gig with Martin O'Neill with no real explanation because I can't give one because I've not been given one. But it's not on my point, it's on his point. It's out with my control. No response, obviously, for the PR guy. But I had to just switch my phone off. I was getting phone calls for the Seychelles, I was getting phone calls, I was getting DM, everything. What was happening is Martin coming back, and I could not answer the question. Like, legitimately, I didn't know the answer. We then go into the Celtic Rangers game, play them off the park in the first half. Where did that come from? And there would have been people in the stadium said, see, Nancy's a man. There'd have been people in that boardroom thinking, see, this is what we've brought in. We capitulate in the second half. And after that moment, I'm thinking, he's got to go tonight. I think I tweeted that. He's got to go tonight. Did I believe it was going to happen? No, and it didn't. But the decision was made. But from my information that I've got, Desmond tried to block it.
Tried to block?
He tried to block Nancy getting sacked.
Wow.
Right? And that's where all the press coverage is coming for, that people stood up and all the rest of it. He would have kept him till at least the end of January, Duncan, right? That goes without, I can't even imagine that scenario. So this leads us into how the club is made up and how we can change it. Because you imagine we had kept Nancy, that's just one example of a million different examples that he has overruled somebody at Celtic. I mean, he overruled the appointment of Gus Hiddink and brought in Martin O'Neill first time in. So a lot of Celtic fans are like, what do you do? It's almost as if people have, it's like a safety blanket. Oh, we've got a billionaire who owns the club. He doesn't own the club and he doesn't contribute his billions to Celtic. So there's no point in him being a billionaire as a minority shareholder, a principal shareholder. So talk us through you and some of your business colleagues, your friends, thought process and how to do things differently.
And just before I do that, just to go back and challenge you on that statement there of what you said about Dermot Desmond wanting to block him sacking. I don't believe that for a minute, because see, if Dermot had wanted to block that, he'd have blocked it. End of story. He's got carte blanche decision making, and the club and its executive are terrified of him. If he didn't want him sacked, he wouldn't have got sacked, in my opinion. I don't know that.
And Tisdale, of course, being his appointment.
Yeah, he probably wants to sweep that under the carpet. He's been whizzed like somebody phoning my ma and they're asking for the bank details for a gas repayment and giving it. He's been duped at a wedding. We've all been duped at weddings. I've had 2 duped weddings. That's another story. But so in terms of where we are with Celtic Supporters Limited, that rolls off the tongue. We'll call it CSL. Yeah, we're going, we're rolling, we're on, we're in, we're up, we're live, we're asking for members, we're getting members, and we're doing stuff like this. We're doing other interviews and trying to get ourselves out there front and centre, rightly or wrongly. And then until somebody comes up with a better vehicle for this, then we're going to keep cracking on to do it. Ultimately, we're trying to create an organisation that can affect change at the club. What does that mean? So there's only a way that you can affect change in a PLC, and that is through like proper governance, proper procedures, proper processes in place that you can have a voice in the club, whether that be at an AGM, whether it be buying shares, whether it be stopping resolutions, whether it be stopping some bad actors coming into a club. And because Dermot wakes up tomorrow morning and thinks, I've had enough of this, I'm going to flog it, and I've sold 100 million out to whoever cares in whichever country that doesn't have the best interests of Celtic at heart. You want to be able to stop that. But it's hard to do that, Paul John. It's really, really hard to do that. But Celtic are a PLC, they have to follow rules. So we've started the journey. First things first, we're not in this to make money. It's probably cost me money to do some of the things that I've done in this. The organisation's been set up as a company limited by guarantee, and this is really boring stuff, but it's important. So the company limited by guarantee, what does that mean? It doesn't have shareholders, it has members. One member, one vote. You can pay £10 a month for your membership. I can pay £50 a month. Somebody can pay £100 a month if they want. You don't have any more of a say in a members-based organisation. It's one member, one vote. And we're all about acquiring a voting share block in Celtic PLC. And we want to get to 1% to 5%. Our ultimate goal for Celtic Supporters Limited is to get to 29.9%. That's where we want to get to. Now, unless you've got the guts of 100 million at that chateau in Fife that you've got, then we don't have the 100 million to go and buy out Dermot or buy Linsell Train shares or make an offering out to the Celtic fans to buy their shares. So how do you do that? You do that through having a large number of members in a members-based organisation. So we sidebar, if you look at a club through in Edinburgh, Hearts, I don't think any of us have got much love for Hearts as a club. I spent a wee bit of time with Hearts when I was at Thistle and we were doing the fan ownership thing. I spent quite a bit of time with Mrs. Budge at Hearts, and our first advice, by the way, was, fan ownership, son, don't date it, it's a nightmare. She doesn't talk like that, but for my reference, she's like, it's really, really hard, it's really, really difficult. But Hearts have got 8,000 members in their Hearts, Big Hearts Foundation, whatever they call it, and they've got a majority share in Hearts, and they've got it backed up with people like Tony Bloom and other investors. And I think Hearts, third biggest club in Scotland, I think everybody would probably say Hearts and Aberdeen, probably third and fourth biggest clubs in Scotland. It's only Hearts though, they've got 8,000. So is it beyond any possibility for a members-based organisation at Celtic to have, and we've done the numbers, back of a fag packet numbers, but if we had 15,000, if we had 15,000 members contributing a minimum of £10 a month, you start to have an organisation that has enough income to generate money that you can then go, and I'm going to say this, make an offer to buy out Dermot, make an offer to buy out the Linsell Train shares, or make an offer to do a prospectus to get to 29.9%, not 30%, because at 30% you've got to make an offer for the entire club. And I don't think even you could stretch to the 200 or 300 million that would be required for that. But why not? Why not like shoot for the moon on this? And to get to 29.9%, you then have serious influence in that club. And you've got, there's 24,000 shareholders in Celtic. There's only a handful that have got more than 1%. And Desmond, by the way, doesn't have a single share in Celtic. You don't see Desmond shareholder. It's in his investment vehicle that he has it, and then he'll be a Linsell Train investment vehicle, and then 2 or 3 other individuals that have got 0.5%, 1%, and a couple of guys that have got 6, 7, 8, 9%. But a handful of guys have got more than 1% in Celtic. So 24,000 shareholders are mostly small shareholders that bought possibly their first share and their last share in the 90s to the Fergus McCann share issue. So we've got an initiative to reunite a lot of the fans with those shares that are missing. Every single penny, other than a few costs for running a website and some costs for running a payment vehicle, all the costs, all the income from CSL is going to go towards buying shares. None of us are getting paid. We're not charging, we're not taking salaries. There's no salaries to take. We're not charging for services. We're doing this as volunteers, and we're looking for more volunteers. I put a note out yesterday looking for somebody to help us with admin, because the inbox is starting to get a lot of traffic, or social media is trying to get a lot of traffic. So we're doing it for the right reasons. There's no ulterior motive here, and it's not some elite club for like wealthy guys and shareholders. We've got about 500 people that, in fact, it's over 600 now in Celtic Supporters Limited. Less than 30% of them are shareholders. About 60% of them are season ticket holders. So there's a whole bunch of people that, and it always annoys me when people judge a Celtic fan. You get Celtic fans who go to 50 games a year. They go home, they go away, they go abroad. I get that. I was that guy. I love that. You get guys that go 5, 6, 7 times a season. You get guys that live in other countries that only watch through the telly. I'm never going to judge somebody on how to be a better Celtic supporter than another. And Celtic Supporters Limited, it's for everybody to come. It's not about elite people. It's not about shareholders. It's not about wealthy people. It's actually the opposite of that. And the minute you join the CSL, you actually become a shareholder in Celtic, because the members own these shares. So you're instantly, day one, you become a member. It's almost like a cooperative. Nobody's there to make money out of shares. The members will own the shares, but it's not to then sell them at a profit. You can't go and sell your membership of CSL. You're buying into a cooperative. And as I say, it's going to be slow. It's going to be like evolution more than revolution. But for us to do this, we have to have a single focus, and the single focus is amassing that share block. We're not going to get distracted by doing other stuff that is going on at the club, irrespective of what we think personally, and get nothing but respect for all of the protests, the visual things that's going on at Celtic. I love that about us. We're good at getting informed, being rebels, doing it. I get all that. As long as it's peaceful and nobody's getting physically harmed out of it, crack on. We're coming at it from a different angle. It's a pincer movement here. We're going to do it slowly, slice by slice, and try and get some shares that we own through our members, get the proxies. I think we're now, I would say we could probably, should it happen tomorrow, we could probably get about 1.5 million shares, which is 1.5% of Celtic under our proxy vote. And I think as long as we do what we say we're going to do and not do other things, chunkier shareholders that we've had conversations with, they said, we will, should we need to, if something bad is going to happen to our club and you guys have done all the things you say you're going to do and don't get distracted by doing these things, we will come under your voting block. And that's a good thing for Celtic. Whether people like me or not, or like David or not, that's not important in this. This is about Celtic fans, Celtic shareholders, just the Celtic family had one place to put all our chips, and should something bad look like it's going to happen, we can stop it because it's our club. It's our club. It should be, these guys are ships in the night. It's just pretty bad actors that are in there right now. They're custodians of the club. It's our club and it should be our club and we should run it our way.
Without a doubt, some incredible figures there. I didn't know there was 8,000 members at Hearts. That's quite impressive. When I look at Celtic and compare them in terms of the size of the club, so that gives you a sense of what could be achieved.
Yeah.
I know, having spent some time with you, and it was great over in Madrid, Duncan, that you don't look down your nose at Celtic supporters. I also know that perception, particularly on social media, can get a bit messy. And there's a lot of emotions running high at the moment. It was almost like you were, everywhere I looked, you were on the telly or on the radio and all that. It was great. And you're spreading the word. There was a bit of backlash saying, who's this guy looking down his nose at Celtic fans and all this kind of stuff. I know that's not the case, but I also want to give you an opportunity just to have a wee chat about that. You weren't talking down your nose at anybody, because in actual fact, when it comes to the action, and you lived through the 90s like myself, that's what was necessary. There was a street movement which was absolutely necessary for Celtic to get that end result, which was a takeover. And so I don't know if it's been misconstrued or it was the choice of language. You don't look down your nose at Celtic fans. And I just want to put that out there.
And I don't. And look, maybe some of my language has been clunky, but for the avoidance of doubt, and I've said it there, this is for everybody. It's not about who's got money, who's not got money, what school they went to, and it's outrageous. Some of the things that, I'm not a big participant in social media, having now dipped back into it, looking at it, some of the things that have been said are just patently wrong, and a lot of them are quite nasty. I'm actually thankful I've got quite a thick skin. I can look myself in the mirror. I know that I've got the best intentions at heart for this organisation. It couldn't be more untrue to say that that we're looking down our nose at anybody. It's the opposite of that. We want somewhere that everybody can come, congregate. This is our family. This is our congregation. This is our church. We want everybody under one roof so that we can, and big numbers make a massive difference. And it doesn't matter how much money somebody's got or not got. And like I say, irrespective of how you contribute, and we've had a couple of heavy donations, and we've got a couple of people that I want to buy a lifetime membership. That's great. You chip in with a lifetime membership at thousands and thousands of pounds. You've not got any more votes than somebody at £10 a month. And it's not an elite thing, and it's not about money. It's about Celtic, and it's about affecting change in our club. And we are unfortunately a PLC. There's not many PLC clubs left. There's not. I mean, I think there's maybe us and Tottenham that are the two sort of remaining PLCs. And funnily enough, other than Tottenham's the only club I think in British football has got more cash in the bank.
Interesting.
Than us. Funny that. And you tend to accumulate cash in a club because you're either or a business because you're going to sell it or you're paying a dividend. We don't pay a lot of dividends. We pay about £400,000-500,000 a year total in dividends. That's a lot of money, but for a £150 million business, it's not that bad. Like Paul John, it's not. People will always find a negative. I'm sure they come for you online, given the presence that you've got and the profile that you've got. This is not about profile. We've got no interest in getting closer to Celtic. I tell you now, and we get a phone call from Celtic saying, "Come on in for a cup of tea and a custard cream." We've got no interest in doing that unless they tell us they're all going and we're going to have a change in direction of the club. We've got no interest. We're not going to be bought out by, "Oh, come on into the boardroom, come on, sit." We've got no interest in that whatsoever. Our goal is clear in this. We want to get to 29.9% of shares owned by the fans, and ultimately, I want Celtic, in my personal opinion, it is my opinion, Celtic should be a minimum 51% owned by the fans, and you then have 2 or 3 other investors and corporate organisations that can prop you up. And should you need to spend 100 million on your stadium or do this and that, you can then tap into those guys. But this club should be run and controlled, and the destiny of this club should be with the fans, all fans, not rich fans. I would never judge somebody on being poor or being rich. I just judge somebody for how they are. And I'm certainly not looking down at my nose at any Celtic fans. My nose is big enough to look it down for other clubs.
When I look at it as well, I'm thinking it's the long road. It's not going to happen overnight. Could we even put a timeline? Are we talking 3 to 5 years, Duncan, on this?
I don't know. I could do that, but it wouldn't mean anything. I think it could be event driven. For me,
Yeah.
it could be event driven.
Because that's what we're doing in Madrid. David was speaking.
Yes.
To an audience.
100%. But no, but when I say event driven, I mean it's more something happens in Celtic future.
Yeah.
And everybody, like Celtic fans, assemble. So it's a new Avengers movie, and that we've got to get together and stop something. So the quicker that we as at CSL start doing things, and we can establish ourselves as being like a sound, proper organisation, hopefully more members will come. But as long as we've demonstrated we've done whatever we said we were going to do to these chunkier investors, should they need to come with us to stop something happen or make something happen, we can do. But we've got to get there. But the easy thing to do is to do nothing. And sometimes to do nothing is to do something. This doesn't feel like one of those times. For most people that are spending the time watching and listening to this, after their friends and family, it's Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
That is what drives us. That tends to be what drives our moods and our emotions, which is, like I say, it's absolutely ludicrous. Like, the only things that have been consistent in my life are my mum and dad and Celtic. Everything else has come and or gone.
Yeah.
Celtic's always there. And we've got a duty of care to our kids and their kids that 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, they've got a club that they've got a big influence in and that they're in control of. And if we don't try and affect change in our club, there's a serious danger that this gets further and further and further away from us. I don't want that to happen.
I don't think Fergus wanted it to happen, did he? He didn't want one person to rule the roost at Celtic Park. I was having a wee look at some figures, and some of the bigger clubs, I think Benfica have got a huge membership. And I look at Celtic and think, we've got a global fan base out there. We could have a huge membership as well.
We have, Paul John. There's not many clubs where fan ownership works. And for fan ownership to work, you have to have a very, very big global fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Tick, you get that. You need to have engaged fans that spend money in the stadium, outside of the stadium. We do that, maybe less at the moment. And that we've got good corporate investors that want to get involved with us. We can have all of that. I think that we are, if you were to do a test case study on who is an ideal club for fan ownership, Celtic would be up there. I think the good news for us is that, see, 10, 15 years from now, the landscape of football is changing. And right now, I actually don't think there's a bigger club in Britain than Celtic, than potentially Manchester United or Liverpool. The only thing that's different is the TV money that we get or don't get. That's changing. That's gone. 10, 15 years from now, that's gone. All of the TV deals in Europe are going backwards, with the exception of the English one. And they've had to give a lot more to get the same. In France, it's gone back dramatically. Other than sort of 2 or 3 teams in France, Celtic's revenues are way bigger than French teams. You fast forward 15, 20 years from now, the super clubs in European football are the ones that have got 80, 90,000 seat stadiums that are full every week, that are generating 100 million of stadium revenue, 100 million of merchandise revenue, and 100 million of corporate revenue for sponsors and what have you. The 300 million, the money comes from people that are watching the club in the stadium and online. The TV money is going to become less relevant. It's going to be a European league where there's a minimum 15, 20 European games. We should be at that table because there's nobody deserves to be at that table more than us. Not because we're entitled, it's because we've got the global fan base and we've got engaged fans that can make that happen. That's 15, 20 years from. I'm more concerned about 15, 20 days from now, and when a striker's coming in and a centre half and another couple of defenders. That's what I'm more concerned about. But let's not take our eye off the ball. Football is changing financially, and we should be front and centre when that change comes in order to be involved at the very, very top table, because that's where we belong. And I listened this morning to Stephen Craig on you, and I loved his Lisbon in our lifetime. I was lucky enough to be at Seville. It didn't have the happy ending I was looking for. Why are we not looking for that Lisbon in our lifetime? We should, as a club, given where we are and all the resources we have, we should absolutely be achieving that in our lifetime.
You know, I didn't get into Celtic to learn about businesses and boardrooms and shares, but through these discussions, and I think a lot of Celtic fans are the same, we learn a hell of a lot. We become informed by speaking to people like yourself, like Stephen, David Lowe, Paul Smith, Willie Hockey and others. So thanks very much for educating me when it comes to that side of the game. And you will come back on, hopefully, when we're a wee bit happier and we've got a striker. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure, Paul.
thanks.
Thank you, sir.
All
Hail,
my
hail.
pleasure. Thanks once again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. Join us next week, because this is Acsom.